serious. People of Reddit who have practiced or witnessed acts of the witchcraft, voodoo, or the occult. What was the strangest / most unexplainable thing you saw? While in Africa I had heard rumors of witchcraft and lighting. I believed none of it. One day while I was doing humanitarian work in a township, basically big subdivisions of small cinder block houses, I saw a huge red bolt of lightning come out of the sky and hit a shack off in the distance. Not a cloud in sight. Still have no explanation of how the fuck that happened. Everyone in the township said witchcraft. And I gotta say that along with lots of other crap I saw. I am a full believer that witchcraft exists. When I was a teen, a bunch of my friends went through a Wiccan phase. I honestly thought it was a bunch of hooey. But I played along for the most part because, hey, they could have got into drugs or horses instead, right? But despite thinking it bullshit, there was one moment that made me question things. Us girls had met up to hang out. And one was brandishing a wooden walking stick. I have poured my energy into this totem, she declared. Then she started passing it around the room. The others cooed about how they could feel the power within as they held it. Of course someone handed me the stick eventually. I could barely contain my eye roll as I took it. As I held the walking stick, it sent a tingling sensation up my arms. I passed it on quickly. Not as dramatic as some of the stories here. But gosh, that was weird. Because hey, they could have got into drugs or horses instead, right? It made me cackle hysterically that drugs and horses are on the same level of distastefulness to you. Friends don't let friends become horse girls. I was the victim of a bear walker. In First Nation cultures, a bear walker is someone who uses our sacred medicines for bad and not good. They can make someone very sick. Only a medicine man may reverse it, and it often comes as a gamble for the bear walker. Once reversed, they will suffer more than the one they made sick. I was 20 years old and very healthy. One night, I had a dream I was in a field and was picking wildflowers. From each direction, a tornado was coming at me. I woke up in a fevered sweat. That began 2 months of sheer misery. My doctor kept saying that I had a UTI. She would give me antibiotics and it would subside for a while. I lost 40 pounds in the span of 2 months. By the end of it, I couldn't walk. Barely ate. Finally my mom got tired of it. My sister bundled me up and we went to the hospital. Though an earlier ultrasound showed nothing. There was a huge growth on my ovary. A few days later I had surgery, and when the doctor came to visit me, he said he never seen anything like it. It was a yellow, almost concrete-like substance around my ovary. I got better, but my mother remained unconvinced and scheduled an appointment with a medicine man. We gave him tobacco and he smoked a pipe and sang a song. He said something along the lines of a woman seeing me at a powwow. She became interested in who I was because of my mother. She threw a piece of medicine in my path. I stepped on it and it went up the right leg. He took a bone, I am not sure what kind, placed it in the area and began to suck. Weird, I know. He started vomiting yellow. Like the doctor said. He gave me medicines and rituals for my mom to do. I went home that night and slept for 13 hours. My sickness never returned. Both my husband and I have family members who have a little magic. I was staying with my grandma so she could help me with the baby. I had a bad toothache and waited for my appointment. Up late with pain, trying to be quiet so I don't wake anyone. My 2-year-old calls for me. I bend over the playpen and she puts her tiny hand on my cheek and said, "Poor mama." That instant the pain was gone. I was helping my cousin move into his first apartment. When I pulled into the parking lot, my daughter looked up from her dolls and said monsters live there. She spent the day talking to her friends from behind the curtain. I didn't tell my cousin about the monsters. He moved out after 20 days. When I was 20 I had a detailed dream that I was talking to little girl. "We have to save him," she said. "Who?" I asked. She looks over the side of the raft and in the black oily water a baby boy is floating. 3 years later I have a daughter and a newborn son who look just like the kids in my dream. When I was 13 my future sister-in-law spent the night. We were up late and noticed the corners of my room getting darker. It kept closing in and we got scared. We went down to the living room and sat close to each other. That is when we saw the large rotten fox walking on its hind legs outside the picture window. It looked at us for a long time before it walked away. I have a lot more. Safe to say I believe in the possibility of a world just outside of notice. I was about 13 and my grandma was a believer in spirits, witches, etc. Well, I had just pissed her off and she told me I was going to pay. That night I woke up at about 3 in the morning and I saw a little kid with a green shirt on in my room. He stared at me for about a minute and I couldn't look away. He then ran out of my room straight through the door laughing. About 30 minutes later another figure appeared in my room who looked about 15. He just stared at me and mumbled something and no matter how hard I tried I couldn't talk, scream, or move. I could only look. He then vanished into seemingly thin air. The next night I woke up at about the same time and it sounded as if there 50 people in my room screaming at me to kill myself, kill my family, and just a lot of negative thoughts in general. The next day I got anointed and it stopped. Later that day I had to see my grandma and I instantly started to get sick after I hugged her and she just sat there with a smirk on her face. I then got anointed again and it stopped. I still can't explain how she did it, but I still to this day am afraid to make my grandma mad. A motherfucking ghost pulled my father from the ankles out of his bed when he was sleeping because they didn't want to go to his aunt's funeral that same week. My mom was with him of course and woke up to see how he was just in the middle of the bed with his legs dangling outside and he was scared, pale from fear. We have had so many paranormal stuff happen to us, maybe it's because of where we live. So your aunt was pissed he wouldn't go to her funeral? Damn it, John. You are going even if I have to drag you there by your ankles. And I'm dead. By the way, so trust me when I say people don't want to see that. Now get up. Not sure if this counts, but when I was in high school I had this sudden bout of nightmares and sleep paralysis. I wasn't going through a stressful time or anything and I don't freak out easily. I grew up watching 80s and 90s horror films and I normally sleep with total darkness and doors closed. These nightmares were super sudden and happened almost every night. It was constant sleep paralysis where my room was on fire or there were bats thrashing around above me or there was a figure hovering over my body and I couldn't breathe. The classic. Sometimes my speakers let out strange frequency type sounds even when it was switched off. Things would fall off my shelves, etc. My mom would always find me sleeping on the couch the next morning with the TV on because it was so crazy. Suddenly it all stopped. And when I told my mom, she admitted that she had sought advice from a priestess who engraved a blessing for me on a silver pendant in my room. She didn't want to tell me to see if it would work. I've never had such episodes since. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Reddit After Dark. Have a good night.